welcome Bill Smartt with two T's to the show. Bill, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm psyched to be here.
How are you doing amidst all of this kind of, craziness?
Well, you know what? One of the things I've been doing a lot of is breathing, deep breathing. And it's one of the things that when I'm working with clients to help calm them down before they're going to be on camera is taking deep breaths. So I've really been incorporating that a lot. I think that there's so many times throughout this that we're finding it all goes back to what's the one thing that can help me calm down in troubling, challenging, stressful times, and that is breathing. So I'm deep belly breathing. I've been doing plenty of that.
Isn't
So
it?
taking it a day at a time as well. Taking it a day at a time. Try not to overwhelm myself.
It's amazing. Anytime anyone says I'm breathing deep, I notice I have not been breathing deeply like at all for like the last 25 days.
Yeah, right?
And I'm like, wow, that really helps. So Bill, I introduce you as a public speaking expert. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm calling myself a speaking coach, and anytime you have to speak with someone else and communicate and try and be clear and concise and channel the passion you have for your topic, also being really present, that's a big part of what I do. And I've worked live with people, but I've also done a lot of work virtually, and now we're all virtual. And so we got a lot of things we got to do virtually. We have to sometimes communicate really challenging messages. How do we come across? How can we be present and in the moment and really connect with people? So so that's kind of what I do. And I lead trainings for people individually, and I lead group trainings, both live and virtual. And it's a lot about, working particularly now with the camera. And a lot of the work I do with people now is recording and playing back, and then giving some of my own professional feedback on, what could make them better and what are the tweaks you can do to improve your presence. And the truth of it is, it's not particularly rocket science. There's a few simple things that you can usually do to make a really big difference. And it's a little bit different for everybody, but that's the work I do. And I love doing it. I'm really passionate about it.
We've all been kind of thrust into the on-camera spotlight very recently. Garrett and I, as leaders of an organization, we're Zooming our team every day. We're Zooming with clients that may not have ever met us before, honestly. They'd be like, maybe it was just an email here and there, but now it's a lot more of the teleconferencing that obviously in the current situation of us all working from home, the face-to-face, maintaining the face-to-face without being close.
Yeah.
So I guess my question to you is, as you're so experienced in this public speaking world, what are the best kind of tips you can give people? I mean, you did tell us breathing, but what else? What are your top kind of, actionable insights or takeaways for people?
Well, the three things that I've always focused on are speaking up. And that is interesting because, that was often live, because a lot of times when people are speaking to a group, they're just not using enough volume, but it translates to energy. So if you're delivering like this, right, you have a really low energy. But if you use a little more volume, then we see you differently. You have a different energy. And as leaders, if you're trying to lead a team, they look to you. So we're going through really stressful times. And I think that there's nothing wrong with, admitting vulnerability. But as leaders, people are looking to you to model for them. So there may be a lot going on, but if you can present, with as much honesty as you can, what's going on, but in a way like, yes, there's a lot happening, but I've got this, right? So volume is one of those things that can actually really help. So that's a really kind of an easy thing. And for many people, when I coach them, they feel like I would always be in the back of the room going louder, louder. And they're thinking, that's really so loud. But what the key thing is with all these things I'll cover is the trick for it is use your iPhone. Use your phone, record yourself, watch it back, try stuff, and you'll see what works well. So the first thing is that volume and energy level, right? And also too, it's a lot of it now is about the voice. Yes, we're on video calls, but sometimes you'll just be on calls. And that's all people have is your voice. So how are you using that? Are you hitting different pitches? Are you speaking in the same tone the whole time and putting everyone to sleep, right? So having awareness of hitting those different pitches is an important part of that too. A great trick for this is buy a book you want to read, download the audio version of that, read along with that voiceover actor for like a page, then turn the audio off, and then read that page on your own and audio record it, and then listen back to it. 5 minutes every day, you'll start to change the vocal patterns that you've had sometimes for your whole life. So that's the first thing, is the voice and the energy of the voice, because it's really important. And then the second thing I always talk about is speed, right? When we're nervous, and when we're going to be speaking, then we have the fight or flight response to that, and that increases our heart rate and it increases our adrenaline, and we speed up, and we're going a mile a minute. And a lot of times it's information we're familiar with because we're the subject matter expert, but for the audience, it's often the first time they've heard it, and they need time to process what you're saying. So be aware to slow down and use the power of the pause. The pause gives people time to process what you've said. And it's almost like you kind of can calm the room a little bit. And we all need more of that right now. You don't have that constant sense, oh, I need to keep talking all the time, which you can have a presence of someone who seems like you're not really in control. So that's the second piece. So the first is really the vocal stuff. The second piece is the speed and pausing. And then the third, interestingly enough, is eye contact. So when I'm working live with people, it's like, okay, you make eye contact with this person, land a thought with them, go over here, land a thought with someone else. But video, it's all about that camera. So it's all about really looking into that camera lens. And you guys probably know this too, but one of the tricks that I learned as an actor in a former life was, so say I was advertising a pair of glasses. And if I'm looking at the camera and think, this is a really great pair of glasses. But then if I think of my friend Lisa, and I put a picture of Lisa right up by that camera lens, and I'm thinking of her, I think, this is an amazing pair of glasses. Lisa, you're gonna love this. And it's totally different. My whole presence changes because I'm thinking in relationship to a person. So that's really a big shift, because we're looking at this piece of this, round lens, thinking of it's this technology, but you have to remember there are people on the other side of that. So even if you have to paste some pictures up beside it of a supportive friend or maybe your team, just to remind you, oh, I'm actually talking to people, and being aware as much as you can to really look at that camera lens. If you'll notice here, if I'm talking to you and I'll say, so we really need to think about, first addressing this topic. And then we really need to think about addressing that second. You're like, where is he going? Like, it's just shifty. He's not talking to me.
Come back, Bill. Come back.
Yeah, right. Where'd you go? So really all I'm doing is I'm actually looking at my second screen. And I actually try to be so aware of it that when I'm on camera, I'm not saying everyone has to do this, but I often say, excuse me for a second, I'm going to look at the other screen while I get this. But there will be times when you have to do that, but try and move your notes and everything up as close to that camera lens as possible. So, you're not doing a lot of that sort of shifty stuff, because it's very different on camera. So that's a little bit of a tweak. So those are really the main things. It's like volume, speaking up, looking at the tone of your voice, making sure you're not using monotone. Second is slow down. Use the power of the pause. And then the third is make eye contact with that camera. Remember that there are people at the other end of
that. Incredible advice, Garrett.
That's a lot of actionable stuff right there. I'm already, I've moved my Zoom viewer up to the top of the screen so that I can still see you and have that interaction, but have the eye line be a bit better.
And it's also thinking of the positioning of your computer, because sometimes if your computer is low and you're looking down, then people can basically look up your nose, right? It's just and also it has Alfred Hitchcock used this in his movies where he had the camera looking up at the villain, so you felt really like you were being about they were kind of above and hovering over you. So it's just having some awareness of that. I was on a call the other day, and someone, had their laptop pretty low, and they had the camera way back, and I could see the ceiling, and I could just see this part of their face. So if you can, we can't always, but if you can, get some books or put it up so that really that camera is eye level.
I think some people like to tilt their screen up so that they avoid showing their bedroom or whatever,
Yes,
whatever it is.
absolutely. Yeah.
But I think also with that, you get a lot of people end up having a lot of weight on the top of the screen. It makes them look small sometimes.
Yeah.
And I think that's something to avoid too. And
you guys know this because you're professionals, and what the work you do it's about that image, right? And what's going on? What's the composition of this? So thinking a little bit about that, and there's a lot online about, how to, do that, but you can have some virtual backgrounds that work. A lot of people do these wacky, crazy virtual backgrounds. They're like outer space, and that's fine, but, just have some consciousness of what it is that people are saying. Look, see, nice. Ooh, that's pretty good.
At least some guiding lines. But
yeah.
There were just a couple other things that you had mentioned in our initial interview, and I thought they were really, really helpful. And that was around actually holding a meeting and keeping the meeting productive.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things you mentioned was clarifying thoughts and trying to avoid going on tangents, and also like calling the necessary people to the meeting.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's some basic meeting stuff. Again, there's a lot of stuff online about this, but some basics are, first, do we need to meet? Like, really think about that, because you're taking up people's most valuable asset. That's their time. So do we need to meet? And why are we meeting? Like, really be clear about that. And you think, okay, who should be there? And also make a list of who really doesn't need to be there. Sometimes we feel like, oh, they definitely, I feel like I'm obliged to invite them, but you really got to think of what's going to be their role, and is it really valuable for them? Another thing is to give people the option to opt out of the meeting if they indeed can give you a reason why they think that they shouldn't go. And as you're setting it up, thinking through that. And then it's the meeting planning. Okay, so we know who's going to be there. How long is this going to take? Maybe there should be multiple meetings. And Steve Jobs had a meeting agenda rule, and so each person had a meeting agenda, and there was designated that person, and they're responsible for that one task. And any notes for follow-up work that had to happen, they had to be responsible for that. And they were the DRI, which is the directly responsible individual, right? So it was very specific to that.
Love that.
And there's also a public accountability to that, because if people like, oh, I'm responsible for that, and they've stated it, again, they're much more likely to actually get it done because they've kind of spoken it out loud. And then just planning the agenda and being clear. So sending out the agenda beforehand, give people time to prep for it. One suggestion is send it out a couple times. You could send it out a couple days before, and then 30 minutes before. You could just set up an automatic thing so people get it, they're prepared. Also, being smart about when you send it out. Don't send out an agenda on Friday at 4 p.m. for a Monday morning meeting. Like, no one's going to read it. So really thinking in terms of that.
You also mentioned keeping people engaged, which I thought was an awesome, awesome tip.
Yeah.
And that is, in a meeting, inviting folks to get ready to answer a question.
Yeah. And say to people, even at the beginning of the meeting, say, so I really want everyone's input on this. So just start to be thinking, we're going to talk a little bit about this stuff, but I actually want to hear from everybody, just a little bit about your perspective on it, just for a minute or so, right? And we're going to go around the room, just so you kind of prime people for that, and they're ready for it. That's also if you're leading webinars too. You can say, so guys, I'm going to be curious to hear from you about how things are going throughout. So I'm going to be checking in with you, throughout. So just so that they're primed and ready. It's interesting because everybody will be like, oh shit, I got pay attention now, right? Yeah. So those are some good tips.
Awesome, actionable stuff. And Bill, if people want to work with you virtually, these days or in the future when we finally are able to come out of our hatches.
Yes.
So where do people find you?
They can find me on my website. Now, it's a little bit tricky. It's smarttalk.com, but there's 3 T's in there. So it's smarttalk.com. So it's just 3 T's is the only tricky thing. So if you go to smarttalk.com, you can find all the information about working with me. Again, I work individually with folks. I lead virtual coaching sessions in small groups where everybody gets a little bit of individual coaching, and then we get feedback from the group. Get to record it yourself as well. So I have a whole plan around it. It's really like a 6-point lesson where you start out with, prep work before you come into that meeting. We meet for a couple of hours. Then you prepare a video. I meet with you for 30 minutes after that to give you some additional coaching, and then give you some final notes and feedback. So yeah, so there'll be more information. There's more information about that on my site. Yeah.
And you have some videos online as well.
I do.
That people can go check out to get to know a little more about you as well, yeah?
Yes, and so yeah, they can go, if you go to Smart Talk, you click on the links. I also have a blog there, so there's lots of additional helpful information about specific topics. So yeah, check out my blog, and there's some videos that I've shot with you guys who did an amazing job.
That wasn't a shameless plug, I promise.
No, it was great. I had such a great experience working with you guys because
we enjoyed working with you.
You do what people should do, which is actually make the talent. You make the talent really relaxed, and you're super professional, and you kind of know when it's not quite right. So and I have a background as an actor, I would do takes and be like, let's try it this way. So there's an art to knowing the specificity of that, and you guys totally know that and ace it. So you'll be able to see in the videos. Right?
So final thoughts. Where are we headed here with this, with the situation we're at? What are your predictions?
Well, you know what? I think it's very hard to predict. I hope for the best, prepare for the worst. But I do think we are going to be meeting and connecting virtually for quite some time. And even when things get back to normal, as I know that they will, when things get back to normal, we're still going to be doing this, and maybe even more than before, because now so many people are connecting virtually. They're doing job interviews virtually. So the presence that you have is more important than ever. And there's a lot of things you can do to really, make yourself the most effective and as possible on camera. So there's a lot of things that you can do to improve that, and some things even kind of that are easier than actually being live, if the truth be told, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So you're in your own space, right? It's like going into the job interview, you're in another space, but virtually, it's a little different, but there's an art to it.
Yeah, we're definitely going to be doing a lot more virtual stuff, even when we're back in the real world. I do agree with you there.
Yeah.
Well, Bill, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We can't wait to share this with our audience, and we really appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you guys so much for the opportunity, and my word to everybody is just, be kind to yourselves. This is going to be a tough time. We just got to be kind to ourselves and kind to others, and just take it a day at a time.
Keep breathing.
Yeah, keep breathing. Thank you for bringing it back. Absolutely.
Let's end this with one deep breath. Ready? We'll see you next time on The Brief.